Hey there, survivors. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's episode. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, let's get started. The city above was burning. Sirens wailed, glass shattered, and the streets shook with the thunder of collapsing buildings. The dead poured through intersections like floodwater, their moans rising into a chorus that drowned out everything else. I ran with the others, boots pounding pavement, lungs burning. The subway entrance yawned ahead, its stairwell descending into shadow. It wasn't safety, not really, but it was shelter. And right now, shelter was everything. The first to reach the stairs was Maya, an ex-paramedic still wearing her faded uniform. Her hands were slick with blood, though I couldn't tell if it was hers or someone else's. She carried a battered trauma bag, the red cross smeared dark. Behind her came Eddie, a transit worker in a reflective vest, keys jangling at his belt. His face was pale, his eyes wide, but his hands were steady. He knew these tunnels better than anyone. Jess, a college student, stumbled after them, her backpack bouncing, textbooks spilling. She clutched a baseball bat, her knuckles white. She looked too young for this world. But then again, so did all of us. Claire, a single mother, carried her son Ben in her arms. He couldn't have been more than 6, his face buried in her shoulder, his sobs muffled. She whispered to him, her voice trembling but determined. Last came Reynolds, an ex-Marine. His fatigues were torn, his rifle slung across his back. His jaw was clenched, his eyes scanning constantly. He moved like a man who had seen war before, and knew this was worse. We plunged into the stairwell, the sounds of the city muffling behind us. The air grew cooler, damp, heavy with the scent of rust and oil. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing faintly. The platform stretched before us, empty except for abandoned luggage and scattered newspapers. A subway car sat idle on the tracks, its doors open, its windows cracked. The silence was eerie, fragile. "Seal the entrance!" Reynolds barked. His voice cut through the panic, sharp and commanding. Eddie nodded, rushing to the turnstiles. He jammed them with metal rods, twisting until they locked. Maya dragged a vending machine across the stairwell, its glass cracking as it scraped. Jess shoved benches into place, her bat clattering against the floor. Claire set Ben down gently, brushing his hair back. "It's okay, baby. We're safe now." But we weren't. Not yet. The moans rose from above, echoing down the stairwell. Shadows shifted at the top, pale faces pressing against the barricade. Hands clawed through the gaps, fingers snapping. "Faster!" Reynolds shouted. We shoved harder, piling debris, wedging metal. The barricade groaned, but it held. For now. The dead pounded against it, their moans shaking the air. The vending machine rattled, the turnstiles creaked, the benches shuddered. But the barricade didn't break. Silence fell, broken only by our ragged breaths. Maya sank onto the platform, wiping sweat from her brow. We bought ourselves time, that's all. Eddie nodded, his hands trembling. "These tunnels go for miles. If we're smart, we can make this work." Jess hugged her bat, her eyes wide. "We're really staying down here." Reynolds checked his rifle, his jaw tight. "Better than up there." Claire pulled Ben close, kissing his forehead. "We'll make it work. We have to." For a moment, none of us spoke. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by the distant drip of water and the faint hum of the lights. Then Reynolds stood, his voice steady. "This is our fortress now. We hold it, we build it, we survive." We looked at each other, strangers bound by fire and blood, a paramedic, a transit worker, a student, a mother and child, a Marine. None of us had chosen this. But here we were. The city above was gone. The war below had just begun. The barricade held, but the pounding never stopped. Every few minutes, the dead above slammed against the vending machine, rattling the turnstiles, moaning into the stairwell. The sound carried down into the station like a heartbeat, slow, steady, relentless. We gathered on the platform, strangers bound by desperation. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing faintly, casting long shadows across the tiled walls. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of rust and oil. Maya knelt beside her trauma bag, checking supplies. "I've got gauze, a few IV kits, some antibiotics. Not much. If anyone gets hurt, we're on borrowed time." Eddie paced near the tracks, his keys jingling. "There are service tunnels, maintenance rooms, even a control booth. If we're staying, we need to know every inch of this place." Jess sat on the edge of the platform, clutching her bat. Her eyes darted constantly, her breaths shallow. "It's too quiet down here. Feels like the walls are closing in." Claire rocked Ben gently, whispering to him. His small hands clutched her shirt, his eyes wide. "It's just a sleepover, baby. Just a sleepover." Reynolds stood apart, rifle slung across his chest, scanning the shadows. His voice was low, steady. "We'll make it through the night. But we need shifts, 2 awake at all times. If that barricade gives, we won't have warning." The group nodded reluctantly. Exhaustion pressed heavy, but fear kept us sharp. Maya volunteered first watch with Reynolds. Eddie and Jess would take the second. Claire and I would cover the last stretch before dawn. We settled in as best we could. The platform was cold, the tiles hard. Ben curled against his mother, his small body trembling. Jess pulled her backpack close, hugging it like a shield. Eddie lay with his vest as a pillow, his eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The moans above never stopped. Hours passed. The lights flickered, buzzing faintly. Water dripped from a pipe, echoing in the silence. Every sound felt amplified, every shadow alive. At one point, a scream echoed faintly through the tunnels. Not from us. Somewhere deeper. It rose, sharp and desperate, then cut off abruptly. The silence that followed was worse than the scream itself. Jess sat up, her eyes wide. "What was that?" Reynolds didn't flinch. "Not our problem, not tonight." But the words didn't ease the tension. They only made the silence heavier. Near midnight, the barricade rattled violently. The vending machine shifted an inch, glass cracking. Maya raised her flashlight, the beam catching pale fingers clawing through the gaps. The moans grew louder, echoing down the stairwell. Reynolds raised his rifle, aiming at the shadows. "Hold!" The pounding grew frantic, the barricade groaning. Ben whimpered, burying his face in Claire's shoulder. Jess gripped her bat, her knuckles white. Eddie froze, his keys jingling faintly. Then, as suddenly as it began, the pounding stopped. The moans faded, replaced by silence. We waited, breaths held, hearts pounding. Minutes passed. Nothing. Reynolds lowered his rifle slowly. "They'll be back. But not tonight." The silence returned, heavier than before. By dawn, exhaustion had dulled the edges of fear. The lights flickered weakly, the air colder. The barricade still stood, though the vending machine leaned at an angle, its glass cracked. Maya rubbed her eyes, her voice hoarse. "We survived the first night." Eddie nodded, his face pale. "Now we figure out how to survive the next one." Reynolds slung his rifle, his jaw tight. "This station is ours now. We hold it, we build it, we fight for it, or we die." We looked at each other, strangers no longer. The first night had bound us together. The city above was gone. The world had ended. But down here in the dark, our war had only just begun. By the second day, the barricade at the stairwell was holding, but the air inside the station felt heavier. The moans above had faded into a dull background hum, yet none of us trusted the silence. If we were going to survive, we needed to know what lay beyond the platform. Eddie took the lead. These tunnels go for miles. Maintenance shafts, service corridors, even abandoned lines. If we don't map them, we're blind. Reynolds nodded, slinging his rifle. Then we map. Small teams. Quiet, no mistakes. We split into two groups. Maya stayed behind with Claire and Ben to guard the barricade. Jess, Eddie, Reynolds and I descended into the service corridor at the far end of the platform. The air grew colder, the walls narrowing, pipes hissing faintly. Our flashlights cut through the dark, beams catching rusted signs and peeling paint. Jess whispered, "Feels like we're walking into a tomb." She wasn't wrong. The first corridor led to a locked maintenance room. Eddie fumbled with his keys, muttering until one clicked. Inside, we found tools, wrenches, crowbars, even a coil of wire. Reynolds grunted approval. Weapons, barricades, repairs. This is gold. We pressed deeper. The tunnels twisted, branching into forgotten passages. Rats skittered across the tracks, their eyes glowing in our beams. The silence was broken only by the drip of water and the distant groan of shifting steel. Then we found the sealed door. It was heavy steel, bolted shut, with faded stenciling across the front. Civil Defense Shelter, 1973. Dust coated the handle, but the lock was intact. Jess's eyes widened. A fallout shelter down here? Eddie ran his hand across the door. Back in the Cold War, they built these under some stations. Most people forgot about them. Reynolds tested the handle. It didn't budge. If it's intact, it could be storage, food, water, maybe even generators. Hope flickered in the dark. We marked the location on the wall with chalk, then pressed on. The tunnels grew stranger. Graffiti scrawled across the walls, old posters peeling, the smell of mildew thick. At one point, we passed a collapsed section where concrete had caved in, blocking the tracks. Bones jutted from the rubble, half buried, gnawed clean. Jess gagged, covering her mouth. "God!" Reynolds kept moving, his voice flat. "Keep your eyes forward." We turned back after hours, our maps sketched on scraps of paper. When we returned to the platform, Maya was waiting, her face pale. "Anything?" Reynolds dropped the map onto the floor. "Tunnels, maintenance rooms, and a sealed shelter. If we can open it, we might have a chance." Claire hugged Ben close, her voice trembling. "And if we can't?" No one answered. That night we gathered around a lantern, the map spread between us. Eddie traced the lines with his finger. "This place is bigger than we thought. If we secure the shelter, we can expand. Make this more than just a barricade. Make it a fortress." Maya frowned. "And if the shelter's empty?" Reynolds' jaw tightened. "Then we keep fighting. But if it's stocked, it changes everything." Jess leaned forward, her eyes wide. "What if it's not empty? What if someone's already in there?" The silence that followed was heavier than the dark dot. We all knew the truth. The dead weren't the only danger. By the third day, the hunger set in. We'd scavenged what little was left in the vending machines. Chips, candy bars, a few bottles of water. But it wasn't enough. Ben's stomach growled constantly, and even Reynolds' iron will couldn't ignore the truth. If we didn't risk the surface, we'd starve. Eddie spread the map across the platform floor, his finger tracing the streets above. "There's a corner store 2 blocks from this station. If it hasn't been looted clean, we might find canned goods, bottled water, maybe medicine." Maya shook her head. 2 blocks might as well be 20 with the dead out there. Reynolds loaded his rifle, his voice flat. We don't have a choice. We go in, we go fast, we come back. 4 of us. Claire stays with Ben. Claire didn't argue. She just pulled her son close, whispering promises she couldn't keep. We climbed the stairwell cautiously, easing the barricade aside. The city above was a graveyard. Smoke curled from burned-out cars, glass crunched underfoot, and the air stank of rot. The moans echoed faintly, carried on the wind. Jess gripped her bat, her knuckles white. I hate this. I hate the sky. Feels wrong after the tunnels. Reynolds led, rifle raised. Maya followed, her trauma bag slung across her shoulder. Eddie and I brought up the rear, nerves raw. The corner store loomed ahead, its windows shattered, its sign flickering faintly. We slipped inside, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Shelves were overturned, glass littered the floor, but some goods remained. Cans of beans, bottled water, a few boxes of cereal. We stuffed supplies into backpacks, moving fast. Every clink of metal, every crunch of glass felt like a gunshot. Then we heard it. Not moans. Voices. Check the back! A man barked. We froze. Shadows moved at the far end of the store. Armed men, their faces gaunt, their eyes hard, raiders. Reynolds raised his rifle, motioning us down. We crouched behind a shelf, hearts pounding. The raiders moved methodically, sweeping the aisles. One kicked over a display, laughing harshly. Another dragged a sack of supplies, muttering. Maya's whisper was sharp. We need to go. Now. But the exit was blocked. Reynolds's jaw tightened. We wait. Quiet. For a moment it seemed possible. The raiders were distracted, arguing over loot. But then Jess's backpack shifted, a can clattering to the floor. The sound was deafening. Who's there? A raider shouted. Flashlights swung our way. Reynolds fired first. The rifle cracked, the bullet tearing through the nearest raider's chest. Chaos erupted. Gunfire roared, shelves splintered, glass shattered. We dove for cover, bullets sparking off metal. Jess swung her bat, smashing a raider's skull as he lunged. Blood sprayed, his body collapsing. Maya dragged Eddie behind a counter, pressing a bandage to his arm where a bullet had grazed him. The dead heard the noise. Their moans rose outside, growing louder, closer. Shadows staggered through the broken windows, arms outstretched, mouths snapping. The store became a war zone. Raiders fired at us, then at the dead, then at anything that moved. The infected poured in, clawing, biting, dragging men down. Screams echoed, blood sprayed, chaos reigned. Reynolds grabbed my arm, shouting over the din, "Move! Back exit!" We bolted through the aisles, shoving past bodies, the dead clawing at our clothes. Jess swung wildly, her bat cracking skulls. Maya dragged Eddie, his face pale, blood soaking his sleeve. We burst through the back door into an alley. The moans followed instantly, the dead pouring after us. We ran, boots pounding pavement, lungs burning. The subway entrance loomed ahead. Claire's face appeared at the barricade, her eyes wide with terror. "Hurry!" We dove inside, shoving the barricade closed as the dead slammed against it. The moans shook the stairwell, fists pounding, teeth snapping. Silence fell, broken only by our ragged breaths. Eddie collapsed onto the platform, clutching his arm. Maya tore open her bag, working fast. Jess dropped her bat, her hands shaking. Reynolds leaned against the wall, his rifle smoking, his jaw tight. Claire clutched Ben, her voice trembling. What happened? Reynolds's eyes were cold. The city's gone. It's not just the dead. It's the living too. We looked at each other. Strangers bound by blood and fire. The supplies we'd carried back felt heavy, but not enough. Never enough. The fortress below was still ours, but the world above had made its choice. It would kill us all. By the fourth day, the station felt smaller. The barricade at the stairwell held, but the moans above never stopped. Every hour the pounding came again, reminders that the city hadn't forgotten us. We needed more space, more resources, and more hope. That's when Eddie suggested expanding. "There's another line below this one," he said, spreading his crude map across the platform floor. "It was shut down years ago after a flood. If we can clear it, we double our territory." Reynolds frowned. "Flooded tunnels are death traps." "Maybe," Eddie said, "but they might also hold supplies. Old storage rooms, maintenance caches, even generators." Maya glanced at her dwindling medical kit. "If there's even a chance, we have to try." So we went. The entrance was a rusted service hatch at the far end of the platform. Eddie pried it open with a crowbar, the hinges groaning. A ladder descended into darkness, the air damp and cold. We climbed down one by one, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The tunnel below was half submerged, water lapping at our boots. The stench hit instantly. Stale, sour, thick with rot. Jess gagged, covering her mouth. "God, it smells like a grave." Reynolds's voice was steady. "Stay sharp. Stay quiet." The water deepened as we pressed forward, rising to our knees. Our beams caught rusted tracks, collapsed beams, graffiti scrawled across the walls. The silence was broken only by the drip of water and the slosh of our steps. Then we saw them. Bodies floated in the water, bloated and pale, their faces swollen, their eyes clouded. Some were tangled in debris, others drifted freely, bumping against the walls. Jess whimpered. "Are they?" One twitched. The moan rose, muffled by water gurgling. The corpse thrashed, arms clawing, teeth snapping. Then another stirred. And another. The flooded line came alive. Dozens of drowned infected rose from the water, their movements jerky, their moans bubbling. They staggered toward us, half submerged, their arms outstretched. "Back!" Reynolds shouted. We stumbled, water slowing us, dragging at our legs. The dead pressed closer, their pale hands clawing, their mouths snapping. Eddie swung his crowbar, smashing a skull. Blood and water sprayed, the body collapsing. Maya stabbed with a screwdriver, her face pale, her hands shaking. Jess swung her bat wildly, splintering bone. But the water made everything harder. Every step was slow, every swing clumsy. The dead pressed closer, their moans echoing, their bodies thrashing. One grabbed Jess's arm, dragging her down. She screamed, water rushing into her mouth. I lunged, yanking her free, smashing the corpse's skull with my flashlight. Blood sprayed, the beam flickering. Reynolds fired. Bullets cracking, skulls bursting. The muzzle flashes lit the tunnel, revealing dozens more shadows rising from the water. "There's too many," Maya shouted. We turned, stumbling back through the water, the dead surging after us. Their moans shook the tunnel, their arms clawing, their teeth snapping. The ladder loomed ahead. Eddie climbed first, shoving Jess upward. Maya followed, dragging her trauma bag. I pushed Claire and Ben, their small bodies trembling, their sobs muffled. Reynolds fired until his rifle clicked empty, then swung it like a club. He shoved me towards the ladder, his jaw tight. "Go!" I climbed, water dripping, hands slick. The dead clawed below, their moans deafening, their arms reaching. Reynolds climbed last, his boots kicking, his rifle smashing. We burst onto the platform, slamming the hatch shut. The pounding began instantly, fists rattling the steel, moans echoing. We collapsed, gasping, trembling, soaked to the bone. Jess sobbed, clutching her bat. Eddie's hands shook, blood dripping from his knuckles. Maya pressed her forehead to the tiles, whispering prayers. Claire held Ben close, her voice trembling. We can't go back down there. Reynolds leaned against the wall, his face grim. No, but now we know. Maya looked up, her eyes hollow. Know what? Reynolds's voice was flat. That the dead don't drown. The silence that followed was heavier than the dark dot. The fifth night underground was the worst yet. The barricade rattled constantly, the moans above never fading. Sleep came in fragments, broken by pounding fists and Ben's quiet sobs. By dawn, we were hollow-eyed, brittle, and desperate for something, anything, that felt like hope. That's when Eddie found the radio. It was buried in a maintenance locker, a battered handheld transceiver coated in dust. He fiddled with the dials, static hissing through the tunnels. At first it was nothing but white noise, but then faint, crackling, a voice. Safe zone, west perimeter. Survivors report to... We froze. Maya leaned close, her hands trembling. Say that again, please. The voice broke through the static, clearer this time. FEMA safe zone established. Navy Pier, Chicago. Repeat, Navy Pier. Jess's eyes widened. A safe zone? Actual soldiers? Reynolds's jaw tightened. Or a trap? Could be raiders broadcasting to lure people out. Claire clutched Ben, her voice sharp. It doesn't matter. If there's even a chance, we have to try. He can't live down here forever. The group erupted in argument. Maya, we're running out of supplies. If there's medicine, food, protection on Reynolds. And if it's a lie, we walk into an ambush. Jess, we can't just rot down here. We'll go crazy. Eddie, we could scout it. One team goes. The rest stay. The debate raged, voices echoing off the tiled walls. The radio hissed, the voice repeating its message like a lifeline dangling just out of reach. Finally, Reynolds cut through the noise. We vote, stay and fortify, or risk the surface. One by one, we spoke. Maya, go. We need supplies. Eddie, go. We need to know what's out there. Jess, go. I can't breathe down here anymore. Claire, go. For Ben. Reynolds, stay. This fortress is defensible. Out there, we're exposed. All eyes turned to me, the deciding voice. I looked at the barricade, at the vending machine leaning under the weight of the dead, at the map of tunnels, the flooded line, the sealed shelter we couldn't open. At Ben's small, frightened face. We go, I said. The decision was made. That night, we prepared. Eddie scavenged batteries for the radio, trying to boost the signal. Maya packed her trauma bag, rationing what little she had left. Jess taped a flashlight to her bat, her hands shaking but determined. Reynolds cleaned his rifle in silence, his jaw tight. Claire braided Ben's hair, whispering to him. We're going to find a place with lights and food and people. You'll see. But her eyes betrayed her doubt. When the barricade rattled again, louder than ever, we all froze. The dead pressed harder, their moans echoing down the stairwell. The vending machine groaned, glass cracking. Reynolds raised his rifle, his voice steady. They're getting stronger, smarter. They know we're here. The pounding grew frantic, fists slamming, metal rattling. The barricade shuddered, dust falling from the ceiling. Jess whimpered. It's not going to hold. Maya's voice was sharp. Then we don't have a choice. We go tomorrow. The pounding continued for hours, relentless, until finally it faded, but the silence that followed was worse. We sat in the dark, the radio hissing faintly, the voice repeating its promise. Safe zone. Navy Pier. Survivors welcome. Hope and fear tangled in our chests. Reynolds finally spoke, his voice low. If we go armed. We go ready. And we don't trust anyone until they prove themselves. No one argued. The decision was made. Tomorrow we would leave the fortress we had built. Tomorrow we would risk the surface again. Tomorrow we would chase the faint voice on the radio, the promise of safety, the chance of salvation, or the certainty of death. The 6-day underground began with dust. Fine grey powder drifted from the ceiling, coating our blankets, our hair, our lungs. At first we thought it was nothing, just the old station settling. But then the rumble came. The platform shook, tiles cracking, steel beams groaning. Ben screamed, clutching Claire's arm. Jess dropped her bat, eyes wide. Eddie shouted, "It's the East Tunnel!" We ran as the roar grew louder. The far wall buckled, concrete splitting, pipes bursting, water sprayed, sparks flew, and then the ceiling gave way. A section of the tunnel collapsed in a thunder of stone and steel. When the dust cleared, half the group was cut off. Maya, Jess, and I were trapped on one side of the rubble. Reynolds, Eddie, Claire, and Ben were on the other. The collapsed wall was a jagged mountain of concrete and twisted rebar, impossible to climb. Ben's cries echoed through the dust. Claire's voice was frantic. "Alex, can you hear me?" "I'm here," I shouted back, coughing. "We're okay." Reynolds's voice was steady, but tight. "Stay put. We'll find another way around." Maya pressed her hands against the rubble, her face pale. "There's no airflow. If we don't clear this, we'll suffocate." Jess's voice cracked. "We're buried alive." The panic spread fast. The air was thick with dust, every breath shallow. Our flashlights flickered, beams catching the jagged edges of steel. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by Ben's sobs and the distant moans above. Reynolds shouted through the rubble, "We'll split. Eddie and I will search the maintenance shafts. You three hold tight." Maya's hands trembled as she checked her trauma bag. "We can't hold tight. We need air." Jess's voice rose, sharp. "We should have left days ago. We should have gone to the safe zone." Maya snapped back. "And walked into a trap. You don't know what's out there." Jess's eyes burned. "Better than dying in a tomb." The argument echoed in the dark, fear twisting every word. I raised my hands, my voice sharp. "Enough. We survive this first. Then we fight." The silence that followed was brittle. Hours passed. The dust settled, but the air grew stale. Our throats burned. Our lungs ached. Jess paced, muttering. Maya sat against the wall, her eyes hollow. I pressed my ear to the rubble, listening for voices. Finally, faintly, Reynolds called. "We found a shaft. Might connect to your side. Hold on." Hope flickered. But then the moans rose. From the collapsed tunnel, shadows stirred. Pale hands clawed through the rubble, teeth snapping. The dead had been buried in the collapse, and now they were digging free. Jess screamed, swinging her bat. Skulls cracked, blood spraying. Maya stabbed with a screwdriver, her hands shaking. I smashed with a pipe, the bodies thrashing, the moans deafening. The rubble shifted, dust raining down. More hands clawed through, more mouths snapping. The collapse hadn't sealed us in. It had opened a door. We fought, desperate, every swing fueled by terror. The dead pressed closer, their moans echoing, their bodies writhing. Then, faintly, Reynolds's rifle cracked. Bullets tore through the rubble, skulls bursting. His voice roared, "Hold on! We're coming!" The dead shrieked, collapsing. The tunnel shook as Reynolds and Eddie smashed through from the other side, crowbars tearing at the rubble. Dust filled the air, beams groaning, concrete splitting. Finally, a gap opened. Reynolds's hand reached through, bloodied but strong. "Move!" We shoved Jess through first, then Maya. I crawled last, the rubble tearing at my clothes, dust choking my lungs. Hands grabbed me, pulling me free. We collapsed onto the platform, gasping, trembling, covered in blood and dust. Claire clutched Ben, sobbing. Eddie's face was pale, streaked with sweat. Reynolds leaned against the wall, his rifle smoking. The rubble loomed behind us, the moans muffled but unending. Maya's voice was hoarse. "We can't stay here, the station's falling apart." Jess's eyes burned. "Then we go to the safe zone. Now." Reynolds' jaw tightened. "We're not ready." Claire's voice broke. "We'll never be ready. But if we wait, we die down here." The silence that followed was heavier than the collapse itself. The fortress we had built was crumbling, and the choice we had avoided was now staring us in the face. Stay and suffocate, or leave and risk everything. After the collapse, the station felt more fragile than ever. Dust still clung to the air, and every groan of steel overhead made us flinch. Ben's nightmares grew worse. He woke screaming, convinced the ceiling would bury him alive. Claire tried to soothe him, but her own eyes were hollow. That's when Jess had the idea. She pointed to the abandoned subway car sitting idle on the tracks, its windows cracked, its seats torn. What if we made that his place? A safe spot, somewhere that doesn't feel like a tomb. At first, it sounded naive, but the more we looked at the car, the more it made sense. It was enclosed, separate, defensible, and maybe, just maybe, it could give the boy and us a sliver of normalcy. We set to work. Eddie pried the doors shut with his crowbar, then rigged a chain through the handles. Reynolds checked the undercarriage, making sure nothing could crawl in from below. Maya scrubbed the seats with disinfectant wipes, muttering that it was pointless but doing it anyway. Jess scavenged blankets, stringing them across the windows to block the flickering lights. By nightfall, the car had transformed. Not much, but enough. Claire carried Ben inside, his small hands clutching her shirt. His eyes widened as he looked around. The blankets softened the harsh light. The seats were lined with cushions and a few scavenged toys, plastic dinosaurs, a stuffed bear Jess had found. Sat waiting. "It's yours," Claire whispered. "Your room." For the first time in days, Ben smiled. The others noticed too. Jess grinned, her exhaustion easing. Maya exhaled, shoulders slumping. Even Reynolds' hard expression softened for a moment. But the children's car wasn't just for Ben. Word spread quickly through the tunnels. That night, faint voices echoed from the far corridor. Survivors. A family stumbled into the station. 2 parents. Their daughter no older than Ben. They were gaunt, filthy, trembling. The father carried a broken pipe. The mother clutched the girl's hand. When they saw us, they froze, eyes wide with fear. Reynolds raised his rifle, steady. "Stop there." The father's voice cracked. "Please, we're not bitten, we heard voices." Maya stepped forward, her hands raised. "Let me check them." Reynolds hesitated, then nodded. Maya examined them quickly. No bites, no fever, just hunger and exhaustion. Claire knelt, smiling gently at the girl. "What's your name?" "Lily," the child whispered. Ben peeked from the subway car, clutching his bear. For a moment, the 2 children just stared at each other. 2 small survivors in a world that had stolen childhood itself. Then Ben held out the bear. Lily smiled. That night, the children's car became theirs too. We watched as the kids curled together under blankets, whispering, giggling softly. For the first time, the station didn't feel like a tomb. It felt like a home. But hope is dangerous. Later, as we sat around the lantern, Reynolds' voice was low. "More people means more mouths, more noise, more risk." Maya shot at him a glare. "They're children, we can't turn them away." Reynolds' jaw tightened. I'm not saying we should. I'm saying we need rules. If this place becomes a refuge, we'll drown in it. Eddie nodded reluctantly. He's right. Word spreads. If more survivors come, we'll be overrun before the dead even find us. Jess's voice was sharp. So what? We just shut the doors and let people die out there. The silence that followed was heavy. Claire's voice broke it. We can't save everyone, but we can save someone. That has to be enough. No one argued. That night I stood watch outside the children's car. The kids slept soundly, their small breaths steady. For the first time in days, the moans above felt distant. But as I stared into the dark tunnels, I couldn't shake the thought. Every light we lit, every voice we raised was a beacon. Not just for survivors, for the dead, for raiders, for anyone desperate enough to take what we had built. The children's car was hope. And hope was dangerous. The children's car had given us a fragile sense of peace. For 2 nights, Ben and Lily slept without screaming, their small breaths steady in the dark. But peace never lasts long in this world. It started with the smell, smoke drifting down the stairwell, acrid and sharp. Then came the voices. Not moans, human voices. Reynolds was first to react, rifle raised, jaw tight, their back. We all knew who he meant. The raiders from the corner store, the ones who'd seen us, who'd watched us escape. They hadn't forgotten. The barricade rattled violently, fists pounding, metal clanging. A voice shouted down the stairwell. "We know you're in there, open up, and maybe we let you live." Jess's face went pale. "It's them." Maya clutched her trauma bag, her voice sharp. "They'll kill us, or worse." Claire pulled Ben close, whispering, "Stay quiet, baby, stay quiet." Reynolds' eyes burned. Positions. Now. We scrambled. Eddie grabbed his crowbar, Jess her bat. Maya crouched behind the benches, trembling but ready. I checked the pistol I'd scavenged, my hands slick with sweat. The barricade groaned as the raiders shoved. Then suddenly the pounding stopped. Silence. Reynolds frowned. They're not leaving, they're planning something. He was right. Moments later, the moans began. At first faint, then louder, closer, the sound of the dead echoing down the stairwell. The raiders were herding them, driving the infected toward us like cattle. The barricade shook violently as bodies slammed against it. Moans rose, fists pounded, teeth snapped. The raiders laughed above, their voices cruel. "Let's see how long your little fortress lasts." Panic spread fast. Ben screamed, Lily sobbed, Claire clutching them both. Jess swung her bat at the barricade, as if sheer force could hold it. Eddie cursed, sweat dripping. Reynolds barked orders. "Hold the line! If they break through, we're finished!" The barricade groaned, the vending machines sliding, the turnstiles rattling. Pale hands clawed through the gaps, snapping fingers. I fired, bullets tearing through skulls, blood sprayed, bodies collapsing. Jess swung wildly, her bat cracking bone. Eddie smashed with his crowbar, grunting with each blow. Maya dragged the wounded back, pressing bandages, whispering prayers. The dead pressed harder, their moans deafening. The barricade buckled, dust falling from the ceiling. Then, above the chaos, a new sound. Gunfire. The raiders were shooting into the horde, driving them harder against us. Reynolds roared, his rifle cracking. A raider screamed, collapsing. Another cursed, firing back. Bullets sparked off the barricade, ricocheting into the station. We were trapped between the living and the dead. The barricade gave way with a crash. The vending machine toppled. The turnstiles snapped, the benches splintered. The dead poured through, moans shaking the air. Chaos erupted. Jess screamed, swinging her bat, blood spraying. Eddie smashed skulls. his crowbar slick. Maya dragged Claire and the kids back towards the children's car, her voice sharp. Go! Go! Reynolds fired relentlessly, bullets tearing through both raiders and dead. His face was grim, his jaw clenched. I fought beside him, pistol cracking, bodies collapsing. The air was thick with smoke, blood, and screams. The raiders charged through the stairwell, firing wildly. One lunged at me, knife flashing. I ducked, slamming my pistol into his jaw. He collapsed, blood spraying. Reynolds tackled another, slamming him into the wall, his rifle butt cracking skull. The dead swarmed, dragging raiders down, tearing flesh. Screams echoed, blood sprayed, the moans deafening. In the chaos, Jess was grabbed. A raider yanked her by the hair, dragging her towards the stairwell. She screamed, swinging her bat wildly. I lunged, tackling him. We crashed to the floor, his knife slashing. Pain seared my arm, but I drove my fist into his throat. He gagged, collapsing. Jess scrambled free, her eyes wide with terror. The dead pressed closer, their moans shaking the station. The raiders screamed, overwhelmed, torn apart. Blood sprayed, bodies collapsed, the stairwell drowning in corpses. Reynolds shouted, his voice raw. Fall back! To the car! We stumbled, dragging the wounded, the kids screaming. The children's car loomed ahead, its doors chained, its windows covered. We shoved inside, slamming the doors, chaining them shut. The dead slammed against the car instantly, their moans echoing, their fists pounding. The metal groaned, the windows rattled. Inside we huddled together, trembling, bloodied, broken. Ben sobbed into Claire's shoulder, Lily clutching her bear. Jess's hands shook, blood dripping from her bat. Eddie's face was pale, his crowbar slick. Maya pressed bandages to my arm, her hands steady despite the chaos. Dot Reynolds stood at the door, rifle raised, his eyes burning. Dot. The fortress was breached. The raiders were gone. Dot. But the dead were still here. Dot, and they weren't leaving. Dot. The children's car had given us a fragile illusion of safety, but illusions don't last long underground. By the 7th day, a new enemy crept into our fortress, one we couldn't barricade against. It started with a cough. Eddie brushed it off, claiming dust from the collapse still lingered in his lungs. But by nightfall, his forehead burned with fever, and his breaths came shallow. Maya pressed her hand to his skin, her face grim. "This isn't dust," she whispered. "It's infection." The word hung heavy in the air. Claire pulled Ben closer, her eyes wide. Not the bite?" Maya shook her head. "No, this is something else. Cramped quarters, bad water, stress. It's pneumonia. Maybe worse." The relief was fleeting, because sickness spreads faster than the dead. By morning, Lily was coughing too. Her small body shook with each breath, her cheeks flushed. Claire tried to soothe her, but fear cracked her voice. "She's just a child. She can't fight this." Maya dug through her trauma bag, her hands trembling. "I've got antibiotics. Enough for one full course, maybe 2 half doses, that's it." The silence that followed was suffocating. Reynolds's voice was flat. "So we choose." Jess's eyes widened. "Choose? You mean who lives?" Maya's jaw tightened. "If we split the dose, it might not work for anyone. If we give it all to one, they might survive. But only one." The group erupted. "Claire, she's a child. She gets it." "Jess, Eddie's the one who knows the tunnels. Without him, we're blind." "Reynolds, we don't play favorites. We ration and pray." "Maya, praying won't stop lungs from filling with fluid." The argument echoed through the tunnels, sharp and desperate. Ben covered his ears, sobbing. Lily coughed until she vomited, her small body trembling. Eddie lay pale and sweating, his eyes glassy. I tried to steady my voice. We can't tear ourselves apart, not now. But the truth was clear. The fortress wasn't just under siege from the dead. It was rotting from within. That night we gathered around the lantern, the antibiotics sitting in Maya's palm like a loaded gun. The children's car was quiet, the kids asleep, their breaths ragged. Reynolds broke the silence. We vote. Maya's eyes burned. This isn't a democracy, it's medicine, it's science. Jess snapped. And what if your science kills the wrong one? The vote never came, because the dead chose for us. The moans rose suddenly, echoing down the stairwell. The barricade rattled violently, fists pounding, metal groaning. Shadows pressed against the gaps, teeth snapping. Reynolds grabbed his rifle, barking orders. Positions, now! We scrambled, weapons ready, hearts pounding. The barricade shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The dead pressed harder, their moans deafening. And in the chaos, Eddie collapsed. His body convulsed, his breath shallow. Maya screamed, dropping to his side, fumbling with the antibiotics. Jess shouted, swinging her bat at the barricade. "We don't have time!" Claire sobbed, clutching Lily, her voice raw. "Save her! Please, save her!" The barricade buckled, the vending machine sliding, the turnstiles snapping. Pale hands clawed through, teeth snapping. Reynolds fired, bullets cracking, skulls bursting. Blood sprayed, bodies collapsing. Jess swung wildly, her bat splintering bone. I shoved against the barricade, my arms burning, my chest heaving. Maya injected Eddie, her hands shaking. His body stilled, his breath shallow but steady. Claire screamed, her voice breaking. "You chose him over her!" Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I chose the one I could save." The barricade held. Barely. The dead retreated, their moans fading. Silence fell, broken only by ragged breaths and Lily's weak coughs. Eddie lived. Lily did not. By dawn, her small body lay still in the children's car, her bear clutched in her hands. Claire wept silently. Ben curled against her. Jess stared at the floor, her bat forgotten. Reynolds cleaned his rifle in silence, his jaw tight. Maya sat alone, the empty vial in her hand, her face hollow. The plague had passed, but the cost was carved into us forever. The station was dying. Without power, the air grew colder, the shadows deeper, and every night felt longer. Our lanterns flickered, batteries dwindled, and the children's car was cloaked in darkness. Ben whimpered in his sleep, and Claire whispered lullabies that sounded more like prayers. Eddie was the first to suggest it. "The third rail still carries juice," he said, crouched over his crude map. "If we can tap into it, we can light the station again. Maybe even run the fans. Fresh air, real light. It could change everything." Reynolds frowned. "Or kill us. You touch that rail wrong, you're fried." Maya rubbed her temples, exhaustion etched into her face. "We're already dying down here. Infection, fear, darkness. If power buys us time, it's worth the risk." Jess's voice was sharp. "And what if the lights draw them? Every bulb we turn on is a beacon." The debate raged, but in the end, desperation won. We needed light. Eddie led the way into the maintenance tunnels, his crowbar clanging against his belt. Reynolds followed, rifle steady. Jess and I carried coils of scavenged wire, Maya her trauma bag. Claire stayed behind with the children, her eyes hollow with worry. The tunnel was pitch black, the air damp, the silence broken only by the drip of water. Our flashlights cut narrow beams, catching rusted tracks and graffiti. The third rail gleamed faintly, a serpent of steel and power. Eddie knelt beside it, his hands steady despite the sweat on his brow. "Still live. I can rig a bypass, feed it into the station grid." Reynolds crouched beside him, scanning the shadows. "Do it fast." Jess shifted nervously, her bat tapping the floor. I don't like this. Feels wrong. Eddie worked quickly, stripping wires, twisting connections. Sparks flew, the smell of ozone sharp. The tunnel hummed faintly, alive again. Then the lights flickered. Back at the station, bulbs buzzed to life, casting harsh white light across the platform. The children's car glowed, the kids' faces illuminated for the first time in days. Claire gasped, tears streaming. Light! Real light! For a moment, hope bloomed. But hope is dangerous. The moans rose instantly, echoing through the tunnels. The dead had seen the light. Eddie cursed, fumbling with the wires. I can't shut it down now, it's live. Shadows staggered at the far end of the tunnel, pale faces catching the glow. Dozens of them drawn by the light, their moans shaking the air. Reynolds fired, bullets cracking, skulls bursting. Jess swung her bat, splintering bone. I shoved against the advancing horde, my chest heaving. Maya dragged Eddie back, shouting, Leave it! Now! But Eddie refused. If I pull the wrong wire, the whole station goes dark again. The dead pressed closer, their arms clawing, their teeth snapping. Sparks flew as Eddie twisted wires, sweat dripping, his hands trembling. Got it, he shouted. The station roared to life. Lights blazed, fans whirred, the air stirring for the first time in days. The children's car glowed brightly, the kids' laughter echoing. But the tunnel was chaos. The dead surged, their moans deafening. Reynolds fired until his rifle clicked empty, then swung it like a club. Jess screamed, her bat cracking skulls. I shoved Eddie towards the ladder, Maya dragging him up. We scrambled, boots pounding, lungs burning. The dead clawed at our legs, their moans shaking the tunnel. Sparks rained as wires tore free, the third rail hissing. We burst onto the platform, slamming the hatch shut. The dead pounded below, their fists rattling the steel, their moans echoing. The station glowed brightly. Every bulb blazing, every shadow banished. The children's car was warm, the air fresh, the kids smiling. But outside, in the city above, the light was a beacon. Every survivor, every raider, every corpse, they all knew where we were now. The lights had been our salvation, and our curse. For 2 nights, the station glowed like a beacon, the children's car warm and bright, the air stirred by humming fans. For 2 nights, we almost believed we'd carved out a home. On the 3rd night, the breach came. It started with a sound none of us recognized at first. Not the pounding at the stairwell, not the moans above. This was deeper, closer. A hollow thud echoing from the far service tunnel. Reynolds froze. Rifle raised. That's inside. We rushed to the barricade at the stairwell, still intact, still groaning under fists and moans. But the sound wasn't from there. It came again, louder, from the forgotten service tunnel we'd marked weeks ago and left sealed with rusted chains. The chains snapped. The tunnel erupted in dust and shadow as the dead poured through. Dozens of them, maybe more, their pale faces catching the harsh light. They staggered forward, arms outstretched, moans shaking the air. Jess screamed, swinging her bat. Eddie cursed, raising his crowbar. Maya shoved the children into the car, Claire slamming the doors shut, her voice raw. Stay inside. Don't come out. The dead surged. Reynolds fired, bullets cracking, skulls bursting. Blood sprayed, bodies collapsed, but more pressed forward. I swung a pipe, smashing skulls, my arms burning. Jess fought beside me, her bat splintering bone, her screams echoing. The station dissolved into chaos. The children's car rattled as the dead slammed against it, fists pounding, teeth snapping. Ben and Lily screamed inside, their small hands pressed against the windows. Claire held them close, her face pale, her eyes wild. Maya dragged the wounded back, her hands slick with blood. Eddie fought like a man possessed, his crowbar cracking skulls, his voice hoarse. But there were too many. The dead poured through the tunnel, their moans deafening, their bodies endless. The barricade at the stairwell rattled violently, fists pounding harder than ever. We were surrounded. Reynolds roared, his rifle empty, swinging it like a club. "Fall back! To the car!" We stumbled, dragging the wounded, the dead pressing closer. The children's car loomed ahead, its doors chained, its windows covered. We shoved inside, slamming the doors, chaining them shut. The dead slammed against the car instantly, their moans echoing, their fists pounding. The metal groaned, the windows rattled. Inside we huddled together, trembling, bloodied, broken. Ben sobbed into Claire's shoulder, Lily clutching her bear. Jess's hands shook, blood dripping from her bat. Eddie's face was pale, his crowbar slick. Maya pressed bandages to a wound on my arm, her hands steady despite the chaos. Reynolds stood at the door, rifle raised, his eyes burning. The fortress was gone. The dead were inside. And there was nowhere left to run, Dot. The children's car rattled under the fists of the dead. The station was no longer a fortress. It was a coffin. Every barricade had buckled. Every tunnel poured with moans. We were cornered, desperate and out of time. That's when Eddie said the words that changed everything. "The train," he gasped, pointing to the rusted subway car on the far track. "If we can get it running, we can ride out, blast through the tunnels, maybe even reach the surface lines." Reynolds' eyes narrowed. "That thing hasn't moved in years." Eddie's voice was hoarse but steady. "I worked these rails. The engines are old but not dead. If there's power in the third rail, I can bring it back." Hope flickered. Dangerous, fragile hope. We moved fast. Jess and I cleared debris from the tracks, shoving aside broken benches and twisted metal. Maya scavenged fuel from lanterns, pouring it into makeshift torches. Claire herded the children into the car, whispering promises she couldn't guarantee. Reynolds stood guard, rifle raised, his eyes scanning the shadows. Eddie crawled beneath the train, sparks flying as he worked. His voice echoed, urgent. "Keep them off me. I need time." Time we didn't have. The dead poured through the tunnels, their moans deafening. Pale faces pressed against the glass of the children's car, teeth snapping. Hands clawed at the doors, rattling the chains. Jess swung her bat, skulls cracking, blood spraying. I smashed with a pipe, my arms burning, my chest heaving. Maya dragged the wounded back, her hands slick with blood. Reynolds fired relentlessly, bullets tearing through skulls, his jaw clenched. Eddie shouted from beneath the train, "Almost there!" The dead pressed closer, their moans shaking the air. The barricades collapsed, the station drowning in bodies. Then, with a roar, the train came alive. Lights flickered inside, the engine groaned, the wheels screeched. The children's car rattled as the train surged forward, sparks flying from the rails. "Get in!" Reynolds roared. We scrambled aboard, dragging the wounded, shoving the children inside. Jess swung her bat until the last second, then dove through the doors. Reynolds fired one last shot, then leapt aboard as the train lurched forward. The dead swarmed the platform, their moans deafening, their arms clawing. But the train pulled free, wheels screaming, sparks flying. The station vanished behind us, swallowed by shadows and corpses. Inside, we collapsed, gasping, trembling, bloodied. Ben clutched Claire, his small body shaking. Lily held her bear, her eyes wide. Jess dropped her bat, her hands slick with blood. Maya pressed bandages to wounds, her face pale. Eddie slumped against the wall, his hands trembling, his face streaked with grease. Reynolds stood at the front, rifle slung, his eyes scanning the dark tunnel ahead. The train roared through the underground, sparks lighting the walls, shadows racing past. For the first time in days, the moans faded. But the silence wasn't peace. It was a question. Where did these tracks lead? Would they carry us to safety, or into another grave? The children's car glowed faintly, the kids' laughter fragile but real. For a moment, hope bloomed. But hope is dangerous, and the last train was only just beginning its journey. The train thundered through the tunnels, sparks lighting the walls, shadows racing past. For the first time in days, the moans of the dead faded behind us. The children's car glowed faintly, Ben and Lily clutching each other, their small faces pale but alive. But peace never lasts. It began with whispers. Jess noticed first. Eddie lingering near the controls, his eyes darting, his hands trembling. He muttered to himself, glancing back at the dark tunnels we'd left behind. "Something's wrong," Jess whispered to me. "He doesn't want to leave." She was right. When the train screeched to a halt at a junction, Eddie snapped. He slammed the brake lever down, sparks flying, the wheels grinding. The car lurched, throwing us to the floor. Ben screamed, Lily clutched her bear, Claire shielding them both. Reynolds roared, grabbing Eddie by the collar. "What the hell are you doing?" Eddie's face was pale, his eyes wild. "We can't leave the station. It was safe. We had walls, barricades, power out there. It's chaos. Raiders, soldiers, traps. Down there we had control." Maya's voice cracked. "Control? We were suffocating. We were dying." Eddie shoved Reynolds back, his crowbar raised. "Better to die in a fortress than wander into another slaughterhouse." The group erupted. Jess swung her bat, blocking Eddie's path to the controls. Claire screamed, clutching the children. Maya tried to reason, her voice trembling. "Eddie, listen to yourself. You're not thinking straight." But Eddie was beyond reason. He lunged for the controls, slamming switches, sparks flying. The lights flickered, the engine groaned. The train shuddered, half-powered, caught between motion and stillness. Reynolds tackled him, the two men crashing into the steel floor. The crowbar clanged, fists flew, blood sprayed. Eddie fought like a man possessed, his voice raw. "You'll kill us all. You'll lead us into a trap." Reynolds's jaw clenched, his fists relentless. "You already did." The fight was brutal, desperate. Jess tried to intervene, her bat raised, but the train lurched violently, throwing her against the wall. Maya screamed, dragging her back, blood streaking her forehead. Claire shielded the children, her voice breaking. "Stop, please, stop." But there was no stopping. Eddie clawed at Reynolds' throat, his eyes wild. Reynolds slammed him against the wall, his rifle butt cracking ribs. Eddie gasped, blood spraying, his crowbar clattering to the floor. For a moment, silence. Then Eddie whispered, "Broken. You'll regret this. Out there, there's nothing. Nothing but death." Reynolds' jaw tightened. "Then we face it together." He slammed Eddie to the floor, unconscious. The train roared back to life, sparks flying, wheels screeching. Jess staggered to the controls, her hands trembling, her voice sharp. "We can't stop again. Not until we're clear." Maya pressed bandages to Eddie's wounds, her face pale. "He'll live, but he's not the same." Claire rocked the children, whispering promises. Ben sobbed, Lily clutching her bear tighter than ever. Reynolds stood at the front, his rifle slung, his eyes burning. No more hesitation, no more doubt. We ride this train until the end. The group was silent, broken, bloodied. Trust had fractured, hope had splintered. The fortress was gone, the train was all we had. And betrayal had left scars deeper than any wound. The train screeched to a halt at the end of the line. sparks flying, the tunnel collapsing into rubble ahead. There was no going farther underground. If we wanted to live, we had to climb. Reynolds was the first to move, his rifle slung, his jaw tight. Up, now, we find a way to the surface. We stumbled from the train, our bodies bruised, our spirits frayed. The children's car was left behind, its windows cracked, its walls smeared with blood. Ben clutched Claire's hand, Lily her bare, their small faces pale but determined. The service stairwell was narrow, choked with debris. We climbed in silence, every step echoing, every breath ragged. The air grew warmer, brighter, until finally we pushed through a rusted door and emerged into the world above. The city was unrecognizable. Skyscrapers loomed like broken teeth, their windows shattered, their steel frames twisted. Smoke curled from burned-out cars, the streets littered with corpses. The wind carried the stench of rot, the moans of the dead echoing through the canyons of glass and steel. Jess whispered, her voice trembling, "It's worse than I imagined." Reynolds scanned the skyline, his eyes sharp. "We need high ground, a rooftop, somewhere we can signal." We moved quickly, darting through alleys, avoiding the shambling dead. Every corner was a gauntlet, every shadow a threat. Maya carried her trauma bag, her face pale but steady. Eddie limped, his crowbar slick with blood. Jess swung her bat at anything that moved, her eyes wild. Claire carried Ben, whispering promises. Lily clutched her bear, her small steps quick. We reached a skyscraper, its glass facade shattered, its lobby littered with debris. Reynolds kicked the doors open, his rifle raised. Inside. Now. The stairwell was dark, the air thick with dust. We climbed floor after floor, our legs burning, our lungs aching. The moans echoed below, growing louder, closer. Halfway up, the dead found us. They poured from the stairwell doors, their pale faces catching the dim light. Their moans shook the walls, their arms clawing, their teeth snapping. Jess screamed, swinging her bat, skulls cracking. Eddie smashed with his crowbar, blood spraying. Maya dragged the children upward, her voice sharp. "Go, don't stop." Reynolds fired relentlessly, bullets tearing through skulls. I shoved against the dead, my arms burning, my chest heaving. The stairwell became a slaughterhouse. Blood sprayed, bodies collapsed, the moans deafening. We climbed step by step, fighting for every inch. Finally, we burst onto the rooftop. The city stretched before us, a graveyard of steel and fire. The wind howled, carrying the stench of rot. The streets below swarmed with the dead, their moans echoing. Reynolds raised a flare, firing it into the sky. The red light blazed, casting shadows across the rooftop. For a moment, silence. Then, faintly, the sound of rotors, a helicopter. Hope bloomed, fragile and dangerous. The children cheered, their small voices breaking the silence. Claire wept, clutching Ben. Jess dropped her bat, her hands trembling. Maya pressed her forehead to the concrete, whispering prayers. But the dead weren't finished. They poured onto the rooftop, bursting through the stairwell door, their moans deafening. Dozens of them, maybe more, their arms outstretched, their teeth snapping. Reynolds roared, his rifle cracking. Jess swung her bat, blood spraying. Eddie smashed with his crowbar, his voice hoarse. I fought beside them, my chest heaving, my arms burning. The helicopter loomed overhead, its spotlight blazing, its rotors shaking the air. A rope ladder dropped, swaying in the wind. "Go!" Reynolds shouted. "Get the kids up!" Claire shoved Ben onto the ladder, her hands trembling. Maya lifted Lily, her small hands clutching the rungs. Jess climbed next, her bat slung across her back. The dead pressed closer, their moans shaking the rooftop. Eddie swung wildly, his crowbar cracking skulls. Reynolds fired relentlessly, his jaw clenched. I climbed the ladder, my hands slick with blood, my chest heaving. Claire followed, her eyes wild, her voice raw. Below, Reynolds and Eddie fought side by side, their weapons slick, their bodies trembling. The dead swarmed, dragging them down, their screams echoing. The helicopter rose, the rooftop vanishing beneath us, swallowed by shadows and corpses. Ben sobbed, clutching Claire. Lily clung to her bear, her eyes wide. Jess wept silently, her bat forgotten. Maya pressed her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking. The city stretched below, a graveyard of steel and fire. We had escaped the fortress, but not all of us had survived. The helicopter's rotors thundered above, whipping the rooftop into a storm of dust and ash. The red flare still burned, casting the ruined skyline in a hellish glow. For a heartbeat, hope felt real, loud, blinding, undeniable. But the dead weren't finished. They poured from the stairwell, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, their moans rising into a deafening chorus. The rooftop shook under their weight, the air thick with the stench of rot. Reynolds's voice cut through the chaos. "Get them up the ladder, now!" Claire shoved Ben forward, her hands trembling. The boy clutched the rope, his small body swaying as the helicopter lifted slightly, straining against the weight. Lily followed, her bear tied to her wrist, her eyes wide with terror. Jess climbed after them, her bat slung across her back, her breaths ragged. The dead surged. Eddie swung his crowbar, skulls cracking, blood spraying. Maya dragged the wounded toward the ladder, her face pale but steady. I fired my pistol until it clicked empty, then swung it like a club, my arms burning. Reynolds stood at the stairwell, his rifle blazing, his jaw clenched. "Move! Don't look back!" The helicopter hovered, its spotlight blazing, its rotors shaking the rooftop. The ladder swayed, the children climbing, their small hands clutching desperately. Claire followed, her sobs lost in the roar. The dead pressed closer, their moans shaking the air. Eddie screamed, swinging wildly, his crowbar slick with blood. A corpse lunged, dragging him down. He roared, shoving it back, but more piled on. Maya screamed, reaching for him. "Eddie!" But Reynolds grabbed her arm, his voice raw. "Go! We can't save him!" Eddie's screams echoed as the dead swarmed, dragging him into the stairwell. Blood sprayed, his voice cut off. Maya sobbed, climbing the ladder, her hands trembling. I followed, my chest heaving, my arms burning. The dead clawed at my legs, their teeth snapping, but Reynolds's rifle cracked, bullets tearing them away. Reynolds was the last. He stood at the edge of the rooftop, his rifle empty, his eyes burning. The dead swarmed, their moans deafening, their arms clawing. He looked up at us, his voice steady. "Take care of them." Then he turned, swinging his rifle like a club, charging into the horde. The dead swallowed him whole, their moans shaking the rooftop. The helicopter rose, the ladder swaying, the rooftop vanishing beneath us. The city stretched below, a graveyard of steel and fire. The dead swarmed the streets, their moans echoing into the night. Inside the helicopter, silence. Ben sobbed into Claire's shoulder, his small body trembling. Lily clutched her bear, her eyes wide. Jess wept silently, her bat forgotten. Maya pressed her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking. I stared out the window, the city shrinking below, the fortress we had built swallowed by shadows. We had survived 14 days underground. We had fought, bled and lost. We had built a fortress, then watched it crumble. Now we were leaving it behind. But survival is not victory. The war was not over, It had only just begun, The helicopter carried us away, but part of us never left. Days later, when I closed my eyes, I still heard the moans echoing through the tunnels, still smelled the rust and rot of the station we once called home. From above, the city stretched like a graveyard of steel, but my mind always drifted back underground, to the barricades we built from vending machines, to the children's car glowing faintly in the dark, to the laughter of Ben and Lily before the world pressed in again. We had carved a fortress from shadows, and for a time it held. But nothing holds forever. The dead found us, the living betrayed us, and the station, like everything else, crumbled. Yet survival is not measured in walls or weapons. It's measured in the stories we carry, the names we refuse to let die. Reynolds, Eddie, Lily. Their echoes remain beneath the tracks, in the silence between each heartbeat. The fortress is gone, the city is ash, but we are still here, and as long as we breathe, the war continues. Because in this world, survival is not victory. Survival is only the beginning.